Shri Matre Namaha. Among all the literature in the universe, Sanskrit literature is a peculiar one. It is the ancient literature. Generally, Sanskrit language is mother language of the universe. Unless Sanskrit knows, you can't understand other languages. Therefore, Sanskrit is needed for everyone to understand what is the essence of the life, what is the essence of the literature, everything. The world, everything can be noticed by learning the languages. When we find literature, we can come to know the circumstances and conditions of political, religious, and educational, economical, everything those days. In this way, literature helps us to give the accurate information about the rulers of those days. And in this regard, Sanskrit literature gives an extraordinary information. Sanskrit literature is an extraordinary literature than other literatures. In Sanskrit, especially when you come from Ramayana, Mahabharata, Valmiki, Vyasa, the person who got attained fame is Kalidasa. After Kalidasa, Bhoja is also king. Kalidasa was a poet. Bhoja, king as well as a poet. Kalidasa in Sanskrit literature is considered the best among other poets. Whenever if you want to count, you will raise the first finger, this. That is Kalidasa. That's why Sanskrit is to say, Kanishtika Dishtita Kalidasaha. That means Kalidasa was a founder of using simile, alankara. In alankara mean English figure of speech. Kalidasa was the first user of simile. He is a worshipper of Lord Parvati Parameshwara because he is Ardhanarishwara, who Lord Shiva and Parvati. Why? They are united like word and its meaning. Therefore, he chose the goddess Parvati and Shiva to get the knowledge, to acquire the knowledge of word and meaning, vak and artha. That's why he first of all used the sloka of Vagatha Vivasam Prukto Vagatha Pratipattaye Jagataha Pitarau Vande Parvati Parameshwarau. Understand? Now, the king Bhoja. Bhoja is the king of Dhara city. He maintained his poets. Some used to say Kalidasa belonged to the court poet of Bhoja king. Bhoja himself wrote Saraswati Kantavaranam and some other works. He is also the great poet. He also gave importance for the literary works. Even Kalidasa is surpassed Bhoja. Sometimes Bhoja surpassed Kalidasa's style in his written work. While you see Saraswati Kantabharanam, you can get lots of grammatical views. And in his style, he explained even to reach the common man. That is the greatness of Bhoja. When we compare these two, both are extraordinary poets. Both have an extraordinary skills. They know what should be done, what should not be done. The moment of Kalidasa sang the Charama Shloka, the king in the disguise of soothsayer fell down on the ground and died. Kalidasa was quickly realized and made him to wake up. Like this, so many extraordinary points can be bring out through discussing the present topic. Today I took the topic of Kalidasa versus Bhoja. Let us see what and all the greatness between these two poets, great poets. वागर्ताविव संवृक्तौ वागर्धप्रतिपत्तये जगतः पितरौ वन्दे पार्वती परमेश्वरौ. As we see dark clouds in the sky, we rush to a place of shelter since heavy downpour is likely. A devotee asked a pandit why Lord Vishnu is compared to the dark water bearing cloud, or in other words as Kala Megham in Sanskrit, or a darkened cloud in English. The Pandit cleared his throat first, and devotee moved forward with increased attention as he was sure something very interesting was in the offing from the Pandit. The erudite scholar began the story of Kalidasa and Bhoja. Kalidasa was the chief and distinguished poet in kingdom of Bhoja, Dhara being its capital. The citizens of Dhara were well versed in singing classical poetry. The king knew well the talent of Kalidasa as a poet, especially the innumerable ways of bringing a simile in his poem. Simile means upama alankara. He developed a strange interest, knew not why, but he desired Kalidasa to sing the last song for him before he died. Understand clearly. Normally, the Charama Shloka is sung only after a person is dead. Kalidasa therefore made it clear to the king that as he was blessed by Kali Devi, if he sang the song, the king's life would come to an end immediately. Bhoja got angry with Kalidasa for disobeying his order and banished him from the capital of Dhara. Kalidasa wandered in the city of Dhara in the disguise of a hermit. But the king could not get over his strange wish. He launched a search to find Kalidasa whereabouts, and for this purpose he disguised himself as a soothsayer. The king spotted the sannyasi near Matham shop and took make sure that he was none other than Kalidasa. He inquired him, "You are a sannyasi? How come you are seen near mutton shop? Is it not unbecoming of a true sannyasi?" Kalidasa impulsively reacted to the remarks of the soothsayer, but unfortunately let the cat out of the bag by saying, "Where else a person can go after his banishment by the king?" On hearing this, the king became sure that he was Kalidasa only. The king decided to play a strategy to make Kalidasa to sing the last song for him. He continued the conversation with Kalidasa. In due course, Kalidasa also inquired the soothsayer where from he hailed. The soothsayer means a kind of sage. Replied Dhara. Kalidasa, with genuine interest in the welfare of the king Bhoja, inquired him for the news of Dhara and whether the king Bhoja was keeping sound health. The soothsayer replied, "Oh, what a calamity! Bhoja is dead, as he was unable to bear the separation from his best friend and poet Kalidasa." Kalidasa was shattered to hear the sad news about his friend, and with great grief sang Charama Shloka in praise of departed soul. Adyadara Niradhara Niralamba Saraswati Pandita Kandita Sarve Bhojaraje Divangate. The kingdom of Dara is now deserted due to the demise of Bhoja Raja. The learned poets would get punished anywhere now as goddess Saraswati has lost the grip and interest. The moment Kalidasa sang the Charama Shloka, the king in disguise of soothsayer fell down on the ground and died. Kalidasa was quick to realize that it was none other than his best friend and the king himself who acted as a soothsayer to hear the Charama Shloka from him. Kalidasa prayed to Kali Devi to spare his friend by singing the same shloka to give the opposite meaning as follows. See Kalidasa's talent. Adyadara sadadara sadalamba saraswati. See what a beautiful, okay. Previously what he said there, Adyadara Niradara. Now Adyadara Sadadara. Niralamba Saraswati. Sadalamba Saraswati. Panditaha Khanditaha. Here Panditaha Manditaha. Bhojaraje Divangate. Bhojaraje Bhuvangate. So that is the greatness of Kalidasa. Which means today Dara is ever supported and so is goddess Saraswati. All scholars are adorned now that Raja Bhoja descended on the earth. Kalidasa embraced the king and told about the short life at his disposal. King Bhoja urged to compose Kalidasa an epic and Bhoja also joined him to make it. The Kavya is well known as Bhoja Champu. The epic work describes Vishnu as Kalamekam. The Pandit explained to the Vishnu, to the devotee, why Kalidasa described as Kalamekam. There will be a certain hidden reason for his description. Color. The cloud appears black when it is about to rain. Vishnu is also dark. There is a rainbow in the sky. Vishnu bears a weapon, Sharanga, which is also bow. Lightning strikes as a thread in streaks. Vishnu's consort Lakshmi is slender and a sparkling beauty. The birds in sky long for the rain from the clouds. Her devotees look for Vishnu's grace. The cloud, when it showers, cools the earth. The grace of Vishnu helps the devotee to overcome their troubles. The Pandit also explained why Rama Nama is a mantra. The letter Ra gets emphasis in the name of Narayana. If you remove the letters Ra in word Narayana, it becomes Naayana, which means there is no Vishnu. Similarly, in the name Namah Shivaya, Ma gets the emphasis. With Ma is taken off, the name reads as Na Shivaya, which means there is no Shiva. Thus, Ra from Narayana, Ma from Namah Shivaya makes the mantra Rama, which is known as a Taraka mantra. There is a temple for Shankara Narayana in Tirunelveli district in place called Shankaran Koil, where the main deity is half Shiva and half Narayana combined. The list of famous devotees of Vishnu may stand long, but the names that come topmost are, see, who are they? King Parikshit, who enjoyed hearing Vishnu Purana or Bhagavata Purana, Bhagavatam. Sage Vyasa, who sang Vishnu's greatness through his works. Prahalada considered Vishnu as his whole life, and his thoughts were always with Vishnu. Lakshmi was at Vishnu's feet always in service to the Lord. The sage Bhrigu worshipped Vishnu with intense devotion. Akrura entertained Vishnu in an elaborate manner. Hanuman worshipped Rama in his heart and performed all duties for the sake of Rama. Arjuna was Krishna's comrade and had an easy rapport with Krishna. Bali Chakravarti surrendered to Lord and sacrificed his life to keep up his word. Sage Narada is the foremost of Vishnu Bhaktas who popularized Nama Sankirtanam, the simplest but most effective form of Bhakti Vasa, Bhakti Rasa. The quote below is taken from the famous poem. Christabel by Coleridge and suitably modified to fall in line with the topic. Gods will help if men may call, for the blue sky bends over all. The beauty of Sanskrit poetry, a weaver, Bhoja, and Kalidasa. It was a common saying that in Raja Bhoja's kingdom, Dhara everyone was a poet. An ambassador far from country was highly skeptical of this and decided to verify it for himself. So off he went into the kingdom far away from the king's palace. After a long search, he found a poor weaver hard at work. At last, the ambassador thought that he had finally found someone who would certainly not be able to do justice to the tag of a poet. So, taking the weaver with him, he arrived at the place of Bhoja. Here are the lines sung by the weaver at the palace. Kavyam karomi nahi charutaram karomi yatnat karomi yadi charutaram karomi Bhupala mauli manimandita padapita He Bhojaraja Kavayami Vayami Yami. What a beautiful sloka, is it? I compose poetry but not very well. If I make an effort, I would be able to do well. Oh, one whose footrest is encrusted with jewels from the crowns of kings, O Raja Bhoja, I compose poetry, I weep and now I leave. In the place of Bhoja was a jewel among poets Kalidasa. One day, Bhoja decided to play a nice trick on our unsuspecting friend. Bhoja took a courtier with him to Kalidasa's home. When Kalidasa opened the door, Bhoja had himself behind it. The courtier entered Kalidasa's home and broke the news that their beloved Raja Bhoja had passed away. Kalidasa was overwhelmed with emotion and composed the following verses. Again, Adyadara Niradhara Niralamba Saraswati Pandita Kandita Sarve Bhojaraje Divangate. That is, today Dara is without support, the goddess of learning. Saraswati is also without support. All scholars are overwhelmed with grief at the departure of Raja Bhoja to heaven. On hearing these beautifully composed lines and overcome with emotion the grief felt by his faithful poet at his passing away, Bhoja revealed himself from behind the door. Color returned to Kalidasa's face on seeing his beloved master. Bhoja asked Kalidasa to repeat the lines he had composed just a few moments back. Kalidasa, the most versatile among those who can be called versatile, replies this. In the treasure throne, that is Sanskrit literature. If there is one gem that is most praised and talked about, it is undoubtedly Kalidasa. The Kavi Kula Guru as Jayadeva honored him, enriched Sanskrit literature with his body of work that has enthralled people for centuries, perhaps like none other. For someone so significant in Indian culture, it is unfortunate that there is so little we know about his personal history. The scholar Sri M.R. Kale wrote this about Kalidasa. The poet has studiously observed complete silence about himself in his works. His poetical productions alone stand as an immortal monument of his surpassing poetic excellence. And we must contest ourselves with gathering what little informative we can about a poet of such worldwide repute from external sources. Some of these external sources point to the possibility that Kalidasa was a poet in the court of the king, Vikramaditya of Ujjaini. But recorded history, when uncertain, yields itself to several parallel myths and legends. Many such imaginary stories point to Kalidasa as a poet in the court of Bhoja Raja. Was Bhoja Raja the same as Vikramaditya? We do not know well. Stories of this kind may not do much in the terms of establishing, of refuting facts about Kalidasa's life. We may not even be sure if these were actual events that transpired in his lifetime. Possibly a mere usage, artistic license over artistic generations, but these stories certainly add to his reputation as a poet par excellence. Here we explore at these such episodes, each reinforcing Kalidasa's poetic genius. A meal in a verse. Once Bhoja Raja announced that he would offer a special prize of gold coins to the poet who composed the most beautiful shloka. Two Brahmin priests heard about this and decided to tie a hand to composing a verse. The priest composed the first line of the verse as Bhojanam Dehi Rajendra Gritasupasamanvitam. That's all. O king, please give us food with ghee and boiled pulses. They were in the city talking to each other, being unable to add a second line to complete it. Kalidasa overheard the conversation between them and asked them about what they were doing. Having understood their predicament, Kalidasa offered to complete the verse thus. How he completed, see. Bhojanam Dehi Rajendra Gritasupasamanvitam Mahisham Chasharachandra Chandrika Dhavalam Dadhi. Very beautiful sloka. Which means, O king, please give up a food with ghee and boiled pulses, and curd made of buffalo's milk that is beautiful like the moonlight of the autumn moon. The priest promptly went to court of Bhoja king and recited the verse. The king was shocked all of a sudden by the beauty of the verse and decided that it deserved the golden reward. But he also realized that the genius of the simile comparing curd to the autumn moon was possible only by one person. Who is he? Undoubtedly Kalidasa. The priests eventually accepted that they had received Kalidasa's assistance in composing the verse and hence had to forego the gold. Now, lotus bloom in a lotus. Once a poet named Dindima came to the court of the king of Bhoja and presented a problem, a form of riddle, like a puzzle, in the which the first line, typically with confusing meaning of a verse, is given. Solving the riddle, a kind of puzzle, requires a verse to be completed by adding subsequent lines to bring a wholesome meaning, thus clarifying the confusing first line. The problem presented by Dindima was Kamale Kamalotpattihi. Lotus bloom in lotus. Okay, this is a riddle. He told the court he would return after several days, by which he expected poets in Bhoja Raja's kingdom to solve it. Kalidasa, however, was not present Bhoja Raja's court at the time. In fact, nobody even knew where Kalidasa was. King Bhoja was perplexed by the riddle and also the inability of his court poets, because nobody coming forward to solve it, to control the poet. As a king who generously patronized art and literature, it was a matter of shame. What the riddle was unsolved. He then made a public announcement that he would give away half his kingdom to the person who solves the riddle. This announcement was heard by a courtesan who lived in the kingdom. Kalidasa was living in incognito. Incognito means secretly, in the same town as a courtesan and knew her. He went to her house once and saw her fumbling, blundering in an attempt to complete the verse. He got curious and asked her about it, and the courtesan explained the problem to him. On hearing it, Kalidasa immediately composed a beautiful verse, thus solving the riddle. What is verse? Kamalle kamalotpattihi shruyate natatrishyate bale tava mukhamboje katham indivaradvayam. So beautiful sloka. Means lotus bloom in a lotus. It is only heard but never seen. Oh, lady maiden, how are there two blue lotuses in your lotus-like face? Excited, the courtesan went to King Bhoja's court and recited the verse full. The court was astounded by its beauty. Dindima's riddle was finally solved and the reputation of King Bhoja's kingdom was intact. However, on hearing the verse, Dindima at once realized that such brilliance could have been the work of one poet alone, undoubtedly, that is Kalidasa. The courtesan later accepted that the verse was not her composition, but that of a man in her two verses, identical instruction using several words in common and yet conveying deep emotions that were exact opposites of each other was just another example of the genius. That was undoubtedly Kalidasa. Let us end this topic with a wise saying that reinforces Kalidasa's genuine or genius as being unsurpassed and incomparable. What is the sloka? Pura kavinam ganana prasange kanishtikadeshita Kalidasaha Adhyapitatuल्य कवेर भावात अनामिका साधवती बभुवा. In the past, when poets were being counted, Kalidasa occupied the little finger. Even today, there is no poet comparable to him. The ring finger is meaningfully remained true. Its name means Anamika. Thus, as we found the greatness of Kalidasa and Bhoja, श्रीकांताय कल्याण निधे निधेनाम श्री वेंकटरमाशाय श्रीनिवासाय मंगलम मंगलाशासन परिमदाचार्य पुरोगमे सर्वेश मुरुराचार्य सत्कृतायास्तु मंगलम.